Good morning. It's Treva, as you know. At least I think I am. We'll find out who I really am sooner or later here. Probably sooner than later. And it's pretty obvious what my purpose is. And, you know, I'm honored. I'm honored and I feel loved. I feel loved by the Savior. I do. It's a wonderful feeling to know that He loved me so much that He died for me and that He's protecting me. And, you know, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've really helped me become famous. And maybe, and it's not infamy, I don't believe. I think I'm going to leave the infamy to my perpetrators, but I wanted to speak to you about, the worth of a soul. And you can say whatever you're going to say, but each and every one of us have a divine purpose here on this earth. And no matter what lies are told, you probably don't even actually know who I am. So many lies have been told about me, you probably have no idea that all of it is not true. So, but I don't really need to, or feel like I need to actually defend myself because, I'm just living my life. I'm not doing anything to anybody. And it's just kind of really bizarre to me that people would waste all their lives and their time on trying to crush a person, to crush their spirit, to make them feel unloved and that God wouldn't love them. And it's just, how pathetic. It's just, I would be so embarrassed, frankly, to be in that position. But truly, truly. And if you are going through that out there, if somebody's persecuting you and defaming you and you're like going, what the heck? What are they talking about? Was I really these things? Not that, I was young once and, I was raised in a family that, I didn't realize why they treated me the way they did. I just, I didn't understand it. I just kind of got through my life to get the hell out. Basically that's what I did so that I could leave home as soon as possible. And I think that other youth have been in that position where, maybe you go and you get pregnant just to get out of the house because the situation is just not conducive to happiness at all, and it's so competitive. When I was growing up, I sang in competitions at school. I entered state fairs. I was singing ever since I was just a little girl. Ever since I was, a child. And my dad that raised me, he used to tell me, you could put that little girl in a room and listen to her sing, and you'd never know she was a little girl. I could sing really young. And, I wasn't competing with anybody. That didn't even cross my mind. I was just being me and singing my heart out. I used to sing this song by Natalie Wood. It's called Sweetheart Tree. Do you guys know that? Let me think. Okay. They say there's a tree in the forest, a tree that will give you a sign. Come along with me to the sweetheart tree. Come and sign your name next to mine. They say if you meet the right sweetheart, the one you've been waiting for, blossoms of white will burst into sight, and our love will be true evermore. That song was kind of the epitome of my childhood. I would sing that song almost every day in my bedroom. And I remember Natalie Wood at that time because she sang it in a movie that she was in. And I know that my dad or somebody told me that I resembled Natalie Wood when I was younger. And But my father, that I was raised by, was, a very musical man. He was very talented, and that was perfect because it was perfect for me as far as the music. That was really what we had that really kept us together at all, was the music. And I thrived in that environment because that was my calling. And so for whatever reason, I guess that was probably good. And I've had a lot of experiences. When I was 17, I had a boyfriend that got me involved with the band, and so I got to go on the road with them and sing professionally, which was really a boost to my skills. And so I was able to do that for a while, and that was great. It was hard because I was during high school, and so here I am in high school traveling around, but I was really thrilled for the opportunity. It got a little tricky because I was 17 with all these grown men, and so it wasn't always probably the best environment for a 17-year-old girl, but the band leader at the time, he got married when he was 17, and so in his mind, I was pretty much, legal, but I wasn't. But still, I'm grateful for the experiences that I had, and as far as, even though my life is not traditional, I think that it maybe unfolded how maybe it needed to, because you can't define a person's education or experience or the level of their intelligence simply because of formal studies, formal schooling. Because, you glean information, and I'm a sponge, I pick up information, and I did, glean a lot from my education. And so I'm no dummy, that's for sure. And sometimes you learn so much more from the school of hard knocks, I think, that you get a little street smart and you figure things out. But me, I'm just like, I'm loving and kind, and people just see me like, well, she's an idiot because she's just so sweet. And maybe I come off as being just like this little fairy, and that I don't really know what's going on. But the truth is that I deeply know what's going on, and it's disappointing. Sometimes I think the best of people, and when I meet people, I see the good in them, I see their potential, and I don't shy away from that. But because of the kind of family that I was raised in, it was a very toxic environment, and I don't want to just spend time on the negative so much, but it was hard. It was a really difficult environment. I remember, I will tell you this. I don't know if I want to take you down that road just yet, because there was some significant abuse there, okay? But my focus mostly is on, here I was. Okay, let's pause for a second. I want to take a little detour here. Let's talk about death for a second. Let's just think about it. It seems like death is dark, and that's really negative. And it's just, I think that it's a birth backwards. It's just another birth, but backwards. And we go into a different realm, but we don't stop. We continue. And I profoundly know that. And I think that a lot of people know that too. They just want to pretend like, oh, she's crazy, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But they definitely know what I'm talking about, because it is true, and everybody knows that life goes on. Really, if you have any kind of, I don't know, if you really think about it, and if you really use your intuition, you would have to know that these souls of ours, they're so precious. And we're all connected. It's just such a precious energy. There's just no way that light's going to go out. It's just not. You're going to go on. And that's a fact. It just is. But my point is with death, okay? This is a double-edged sword, okay? I mean, there's two different things that happened to me. So you already know that I had breast cancer and I went through chemotherapy. But it's very interesting, because when I had a lot of experiences with the veil lifting, like for a while before I figured out that I had a problem and had to go to the doctor, right? So I had messages, people telling me, you call it crazy, I don't care what you call it. You need to go get that checked because I had a lump in my breast. And I just kept, but I thought it was like fibrocystic or something like that because we didn't have breast cancer in our family. I mean, I thought I was related to these people. Nobody's having breast cancer, so I didn't really think anything. It's no big deal. And it got to the point where it came all the time, you need to go get that checked. And to the point where I did say, it's going to be okay. We don't have that in our family. And it's kind of interesting. At the same time that happened, I had just come back from South Carolina because I learned that George, I guess he's my stepdad, was dying, so I didn't know he was my stepdad at that time. Anyway, I went and saw my ex-mother-in-law, Jan Red, and I fortunately got to see her about a week before she died, and she had breast cancer, and it came back about 10 years later. And so I was really happy that I got to see her. And so I always felt that when I went back to Utah, that it was her warning me, you need to go get that checked, I mean, that's what I felt like, okay. But at first, but anyway, I eventually, I was working for Food and Care Coalition, and I started having this pinch in my ear and my throat. And so I have a scar here. I don't know if you can see the scar. But I went to the doctor because I thought I was coming down with this ear infection. And so anyway, my ears were fine. And the doctor, he just, I don't know what it is. But anyway, the doctor goes out of the room and I'm getting dressed and all this, right? And then I have this like profound, like yelling, it wasn't the Holy Spirit. It was a person. Go get that doctor and tell him about go get the doctor. And so it's like, okay, so I get him back in there. And I said, I forgot to show you something. It's probably no big deal, okay? And I showed him, and then his eyes just like got as big as saucers, just like, you need to go get a mammogram today. He was like, I've seen that before. And I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. But I went to get the mammogram. And unfortunately, they couldn't do a biopsy anytime right away because I had taken Excedrin, which has caffeine, and so they won't do that. So I had to go home for a week and wait. Here I was kind of frantic because it kind of had me spooked, right? Because everybody's like, and I'm like going, and they're like, ah. So I go home and I start walking around the apartment. I'm going, this is when I lived in Oak Hills. I'm walking around and I'm thinking, no way. And so I get on the computer and I going to the Mayo Clinic, and it starts giving, symptoms. I'm like going, oh my gosh. Ooh. So I get up and I start pacing back and forth, right? And I am about to go to the couch. I'm in the living room and I'm going to the couch and I'm about to kneel down and say a prayer to ask Heavenly Father, do I have this thing? And no sooner did I start to do this, I was like the hair just raised on my arms, and I had like at least 4 different energies. They're just screaming, yes, you have this thing. And it was like, I heard them. I heard it. I mean, not with my natural ears, but I heard them loudly. And they were different people, And so here I had to wait this whole week before going back to the doctor to get the biopsy, right? But I already knew in my heart, I knew that I had it because I was told. And so I went back a week later with my visiting teacher, Debbie. She came with me, and she was like doing Kegel, like Lamaze or whatever. She was like, while they were cutting cutting the biopsy. And I was really in a mood where I was just laying there and tears were just rolling down my cheek. I wasn't really crying out loud or really, I was just like laying there melancholy. I didn't really respond that much. And then I looked up at the doctor and I just said, so I have it, don't I? And he looks at me. I'm so sorry. So I'm so sorry. And so we went home or Debbie took me home, and I mean, I already knew, but it's just kind of that feeling when somebody tells you. And it wasn't a small lump, it was a big one. And so long story short, the doctors, once they determine, that you had it, and they get the biopsy, then it goes to a board, a cancer board, and the doctors decide how they're going to go about treating it, right? So anyway, but in the meantime, so I had to wait 3 weeks. Can you imagine? I mean, I was not okay in those 3 weeks having to wait that long to be able to get on the road. Let's get this thing out of me. Let's do this thing, But I was just not, I didn't know what to do. I mean, you're never going to sing again. You're never going to be able to, see your grandkids. And I had 2 sons on a mission at the same time. Both of my boys served missions. And I fervently raised them to do that because I thought that was the right thing to do. But I was genuinely alone having to go through that at that time. And so the first thing they had me do, which was not right away, it was like a couple of weeks later, so I went to Utah Valley Hospital and I had to have a PET scan because they wanted to see if I had any more cancer anywhere else in my body. And I was laying on I was laying on the bed and they were giving me the contrast. And I was thinking about my mom, who I thought was my mom, how she died early. I was thinking about Pam, who died from multiple sclerosis. She died early. Richard, my cousin, who had died like a couple of years, I'm not remember how long, but he had died young, like 42. And so there were a lot of people, and my grandfather died really young. And so I was thinking, who am I to even ask to live? I mean, I didn't even feel comfortable asking to live because they had gone, And so here I am again, laying on this PET scan bed. And I said, Heavenly Father, am I going to, and I kid you not, the Spirit came over me so strongly. And he said to me, this is not your time, and everything's going to be okay. And it was loud and clear. And sorry. But I kept that. I, had to have multiple surgeries. Turned out I did have a tumor right here in my neck. But they hadn't decided if it was benign or not. It's like an NA or something. They didn't know. It wasn't positive or negative, so they thought it was okay. But they still took it out. And that was a real screamer when they scraped that for a biopsy. But so I went and the doctor took this out and he nicked my cranial nerve. And so my mouth, you can't always notice it, but sometimes when I sing, my mouth is lopsided. And I still bite my tongue from that surgery, from just barely nicking it. And so it's like my mouth is not as normal as it used to be. But I had to have all kinds of surgery. Lymph nodes cut out of the left side. Mastectomy, the whole thing. And they did it in segments. I didn't have, every surgery was different. So I had, And that doesn't even count the reconstruction. And then I had to go, of course, to chemo. And I kind of, hopped around a little bit because one hospital was really intense and the other one was intense, but it wasn't quite as bad. And all I would say is like, this is not your time and everything's going to be okay. And so every time I would get scared, like there was one time, and I'm sure Michael remembers this, I had esophagitis from chemo so badly I couldn't swallow anything. And so my friend Michael, who lived in the neighborhood, brought me some Equate chocolate milk protein shakes, right? And that was a lifesaver because I literally, my throat was raw. And then by the time that I had finished all of the adriamycin, the Red Devil, and then I was going to go into the Taxotere chemo drugs, right? But that's when my dad became deathly ill at that point. And so if we wanted to see him alive, we all had to go. And so actually Michael even gave me some air like mileage from his airfare plan or whatever. And so he was my home teacher. And so I went to South Carolina, and my dad, of course, was in, a coma, which was really sad. And I had no hair. I was just as bald as I could be. And so that was really odd. But I was withdrawing a little bit too from the chemo going down there. My hair started sprouting a little bit. This kind of an awkward stage. But that was an odd situation. I come back home. There was nobody to come pick me up from the airport. And I literally walked half of the way before I finally got a ride home because there was nobody available to come and get me. And I'm not saying that because I felt sorry for myself, but I kind of did because I was sick and everybody's at work, and I called people and there was nobody that came to get me from the airport. And so, but eventually somehow or other I got home. I don't remember exactly how. It was really hard. It was, so anyway, I go along, right? And then I have, later on, there's a situation after my dad died, the nuclear OSHA or whatever, the Department of Nuclear whatever, decided to give, we had money coming from them because of my dad, which is probably why I got cancer in the first place, is because he had been around so much radiation. But I had a little bit of money, and I remember going back and saying, Michael, you've helped me so much. I really want to go on this trip, but I'm wondering, should I not pay you back? I went up to the church when he was bishop then at that time, and I asked him, should I pay you back, before? But he said, no, go on the trip, which I did do. And so you can see that I had perfect faith in my friend, I did. And it wasn't like I just went off and went. I mean, I really wanted to ask him if I didn't want to be dishonest by going on a trip like that without asking him how he felt about it, because he had helped me get an engine for the truck. So in my mind, I just thought he was like the closest thing to Jesus ever. I had, no idea. But I went, and it was amazing. It was really wonderful. Thought that I was cured. It was all done. In 2018, I came back, and about 3 or 4 months later, I go to the doctor, and he tells me that it came back and that he needed to go do a biopsy on my spine to make sure, to see if the cells were living. And of course, he told me they were. And so he was very serious, and we need to handle this disease. And this was Dr. Bott. We need to handle your disease. It's come back in your spine, and you've got it on your hip and through your spine. And so, of course, I'm like sick about it. I'm absolutely sick about it. And I knew I didn't want to take chemotherapy again. I even have a video on my phone. I probably wonder picked up that one because I really wanted to save this money, and I invested it like in Bitcoin and Forex because it wasn't quite enough to get me to Mexico for the treatment that I believed that I needed. But it's really strange because shortly, not too long after we did a fundraiser at Club 90, my cousin Doug, I mentioned this before in my last video, he really pulled together like different businesses to donate for my fundraiser. He would always be there at Club 90 on Thursdays to hear me sing and to take pictures. He was a real fan. He really supported me. And maybe it was a year after, like this is the summer after, that there was a Thursday night I was going to go down to Club 90. And I felt sick to my stomach. I felt like I didn't really want to go. I just felt like, I think I'll stay. But it's kind of like, do I stay? Do I go? And I didn't know if Doug, I would never invite, I assumed he'd be there, but we didn't talk about him going. However, the next morning, I hear because of Lynn Jorgensen, my cousin, and Victoria, that Doug was drunk and he fell down the stairs. And I'm like, what? That he went to Club 90 to see you and you weren't there and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and I'm like, I just, your brain it takes time to catch up when somebody dies like that, And it's like, no way, because that's not true. Because I know for a fact that Doug would not have been drinking heavily, drinking and driving. No, he wouldn't have done that. And we've had that conversation before, and he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't have come stumbling in. He wouldn't have tripped over a gate. He wouldn't have. And I still believe to this day that it wasn't what they said it was. When I went over to Paige and Doug's house, Paige told me he had a heart attack. And then I find out he crushed his skull falling down the stairs. That has nothing to do with a heart attack. And the way Doug came that morning that he died, he was talking to me. He was. And I told Victoria, I said, I don't think that Doug accidentally fell. I really don't. And she told me to leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Don't get involved. And it was like, I called the police. I'm like, I'm not really comfortable with this because I know Doug wouldn't be drunk driving. I know he wouldn't, because he made it clear that he would always get a ride if he was drinking. So but when you have somebody, when you're the one that's supposed to die, and then you have a cousin that goes all out to try to make sure you get the financing that you need, and he ends up dying, and you don't. It puts this like enormous amount of guilt on you. You can reason it out, but you have this guilt, right? You think like, I'm supposed to die. And one of his friends even wrote to me, said, if you had just shown up to Club 90, he'd still be alive, and just mean things that was said to me. But I'm very concerned about that situation because I know that I had this heaviness. It was a heaviness that he was around me, and I told Stephen about it. I told Victoria about it. I called the police, but I don't think that that's what happened. But anyway, that's weighed on me for years and years. But the other thing about death is that just the fact that, we do go on. Of course I was depressed. Of course I was depressed. my cancer had come back. My cousin, who died suddenly, I had gone to take treatment, that was making me sick, and I didn't want to take it. And every time I would put the pill, it's like, don't put that in your mouth. And so I wouldn't put it in my mouth. And so I did it for about a week. It was Kisqali or something, Verzenio at first, and then Kisqali. But as soon as I put the pill up to my mouth, like, don't take that. And so I would just put it down. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do this. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And finally, but then I would still go and get the shots in my stomach, whatever shots they wanted to give me, and blood tests. But they never told me it was remission. Never was I told it was in remission. And I kept going back. So finally, I just I got to where, you know what, I want to go to Huntsman and see what they say. And so I went up to Huntsman. I got it, I was able to do an appeal with my insurance and go to Huntsman. And the doctor there, he agreed with me. He said, well, until it's really actively growing, there's really no point in you taking this because, and he was looking at it, it's like, there are, they're saying that there's minor changes here, but it's like, let's just keep track of it, but I don't really know if it's growing. Well, but anyway, I stopped going all the time because every time I would go, it would be almost the same scenario. But then I switched doctors because what do I know? I mean, I'm not an oncologist. I don't know. And I'm trying to stay alive. I want to do what my doctor tells me to do. And so, anyway, I go to a different doctor, Dr. Nuttall, who was in Dr. Bott's office. And it was just the same thing. Come back in 3 months. We need to keep track of this thing. We need to take care of this, But, I was still refusing to take any of the medicine because I just had made up my mind that if I'm meant to die, I will die. And there's just been so many things that happened in the meantime. I was a caregiver for Stephen Farrow, and he was a good friend. And I know that they've said probably ugly things, but I was genuinely a really good caregiver. I was a wonderful caregiver. And I was his friend, and I really cared about him, and when nobody else did, he was very much needed that attention. And so he hired me, contracted me personally, and I think that Interim Healthcare got mad because he needed to live in care, and he thought, he decided to hire me. And so that was great. That was good, And I genuinely did a great job for him. Every step of the way. I have absolutely nothing to hide on that one. There's so much to say. My daughter told me about Star Maker around, it was 2019. And so I decided to start singing on Star Maker. And it made me happy. And I knew I was a singer. I was a born singer. And it was an outlet, and I was meeting people, and, it mattered. It's like, and I'm singing my heart out, just being myself, doing my own little thing. And it just occurred to me, I'm just going to sing my heart out to the day I die. If I'm going to die, I might as well just sing. And it kept me so happy. I wasn't worried about dying anymore. I was just living my life. I was kind to everybody. I was just being myself, Wasn't worried or thinking about another single person. I was just being happy, and I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. I didn't know that my parents were my parents. I didn't know that my siblings weren't my siblings. I didn't know. I don't know who I still really don't know who I am. And I think it's kind of rude, especially for the people that do know that haven't come forward, that the investigators yet. It's rude. I need to have these answers. But you can probably imagine what that might be like. But also, by no fault of anyone's, I got some information about church history, the true church history. I didn't broadcast it to anybody. I wasn't saying anything about the church at all. I was letting people believe what they wanted to believe. But I believe it was probably my nephew Dakota that told my siblings that we no longer were following that faith. You know, we just had it. It was in my conscience that I couldn't accept that all of this information was not true. Was just not true. I mean, and you believe what you want to believe. I'm just telling you how I feel. Okay, I'm telling you my truth. That I felt like it couldn't be true. But I wasn't broadcasting it. I wasn't trying to step on anybody's toes. But the toes got stepped on me at somewhere along the way. When I wasn't even thinking about people and their lives, what they're doing, I was just minding my own business, staying in my own lane, hurting no one, right? Doing nothing. I'm just singing. And I'm sad. Because on the app, I met somebody that I really thought was special. And I was wrong. Eventually, I had to leave, you know, and that's okay. You know, you win some, you lose some. That's my attitude. I don't really, you know, it was heart-wrenching at one point in time. But I realized, you know what, this is my life. I want to be happy. I don't really want to waste my time being with somebody that doesn't love me. And I certainly don't want to be with somebody that makes me creep out either. And that's another thing. You have to be willing to love yourself enough that if you're in a relationship where you're being abused, to get the hell out. Because your life matters, and it doesn't matter how they feel. If you're being abused, and I was being abused in my marriage significantly, and I have no remorse whatsoever for leaving. My children's lives too, they were at stake. And I had met a lady named Eileen Booth at Utah Valley Hospital when Kent, see, I already knew that Kent and I, there was no way we were going to last. We'd already nearly broken up several times. And the first time was over some audio tapes that he had planted on me and on other women during you know what. And so I decided that a long time before that I had to get away from him. But then he ended up getting a brain tumor, and I'm compassionate. I'm not going to just walk away. I mean, I didn't just do it coldly. It wasn't like that at all. But after his surgery, he was mean before. You think he was mean before? Wow. When they took that tumor out, he was really uncontrollable most of the time. And I had told his family that if you don't help me, I'm going to leave him on your doorstep. I warned them. I told them. Because I couldn't handle him. He was abusive to my children before, and it was worse after that. The psychological and emotional and sexual abuse that he was constantly doing toward me was just made it absolutely impossible to endure it. It was just more than I could handle. I was like, and my children, they just, I won't speak for them, but it was not good for them to be around him. Anyway, during this whole process with this tumor, I've been speaking with Eileen Booth, and she was saying, you know, because Kent was very vocal about the harm, he was very vocal about what he wanted to do to me, telling people that I was having an affair, and I was getting ready to go to the temple because I wanted to be there when my son went through the veil before he went on his mission. So, I mean, I was Molly Mormonish. I was doing everything by the rules, and he was out there telling. But he was. I mean, we realized, you know, he had just had a major surgery, and you know, so I tried to be as patient as I could. But she finally just said, you know, I was telling her what was going on. She goes, we don't think your kids are safe. We don't think you're safe, you know, because he was just being very vocal about the harm that he wanted to cause, and that's a fact. And so he had his heads, and I was there. I mean, one girlfriend that I know that he was cheating with came into the hospital and saw him there. And it's just like, and I could feel it, you know, I could feel the pressure of his deceit. He was very deceitful, very, very, very hurtful. I'll spare you some of the details. But anyway, I'll spare him some of the details. But anyway, when I went to them and I went to Eileen, she just felt that it was safer for us to go. And I said, I can't do that unless you really do a thorough mental examination with him. And if he is really knowing what he's doing and what he's saying, that will help me to do the right thing, which was to leave. And so they did. And he'd come back to the hospital to have, I guess he had water retention. So they had to relieve some of that water. And Tony, the nurse that was on board, they'd all talked about it. And so they kept him there in a couple of days and gave me time to go home and get what I was going to get and my kids. And go stay at the Relief Society president's house, which I did. And for about 2 weeks until I could move into the house in Springville from the townhome in Springville. But, you know, I didn't do this in a cruel way. We were under a cruel situation, and I was responsible for 2 minor children. And so it was very necessary for me to make those choices. But by the time that I left, I was so sick of the situation, so sick of the treatment and the way that he treated us, that I never wanted to see him again. Never looked back. Never thought of him except that I had to go to court. It was almost like going to court just made me feel like I wanted to throw up. That was like I was scared, and I just I don't want to see his face. I don't want to hear his voice. I just want to get away from him. You know, that was all I felt. And it was really that bad. And Hayden was the same way. It's like, Mom, he came with me to court for moral support, my younger son, and Cameron was already on his mission by that point. And it was just, we never wanted to see him again. And that's the truth. And I'm telling you that if somebody's abusing you, you've got to go. Now, I left Kent's once before because of these audio tape things. And there's a lady named Vicky that's victim advocate in Provo Police Department. I talked to her first a few years before I finally left after this brain tumor, right? And so, but I was foolish, and I helped him get an expungement for those tapes, those audio tapes, because he cried and promised that he'd never do that again. And so I'm not surprised that he secretly videotaped me and him together or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised. But there's no way, when you consider my medical history and the cancer I had, and then after Stephen died, you know, I went to one place and that didn't work out. And then I ended up going to Brenda's, which was really a fiasco. That was really tough. Ended up getting, not shortly after I moved in, that year I got COVID and was in the hospital. And that's a totally different segment of the story. But just to skip over it for the moment, I mean, I got COVID. I was in the hospital for about 8 to 10 days. And the way they treated me in that hospital, I was so disappointed. I was really disappointed at how they handled that. In fact, I came home bawling because of the way they treated me at American Fork Hospital. You know, because I wasn't going along with the regimen in ICU. They wanted to put me on a feeding tube, and I'm like, the hell you say? I'm eating just fine. Why do I want to be on a feeding tube? And so it was just like, I was determined to get up and start walking. And so they just threw me down the hall. They didn't even, in fact, you know, I was so far away from the nurse's station, there was no lights on anywhere when I woke up. And there was nobody around. I was like literally left alone in that hospital. And that's the truth. And it's documented because I asked for a social worker, and I was bawling. I said, you guys just threw me in a room. There was no nurses around. I was still sick. I just wasn't willing to do a feeding tube. I wasn't going along with the plan. And so that was really unnerving and upsetting for me. And then, not even a year later, I fell, and there was a big piece of tile missing from the bedroom floor in Brenda's basement that I was renting. And I fell in it the first time in July, and I jarred my back, you know, so I went to the emergency room later, too. I didn't go right away. Later on I went. And I told her about it, and she said, oh, that's no big deal. Well, then in October, I ended up falling again because of that hole in the tile. But this time, I crushed my shoulder. I really crushed it, okay? And went to the emergency room. But the doctor couldn't get me in for a week. So I had a sling with a crushed shoulder that was sloshing around. Yeah, it was sloshing around while I was waiting to be able to go into the surgery to get the surgery done. And then after that, of course, you're on heavy duty drugs, okay? Big drugs. And it's a horrific injury. And I'm still healing from it, honestly. And when I had to move, when I was forced to move from Brenda's house the way I was, it was not even a year. It wasn't even 6 months at that point. And here I was having to move and put myself through even more stress, only to go a few weeks without having a place to go because I was forced to go. And then, there's just so much more to this, to what happened to me, okay? And I'll get to it. I've already been into this 45 minutes, but I just want you to know I deserve the chance to tell my story. There's no chance whatsoever that because I had a mastectomy, I have, they did a good job, but I have scars. I'm not going to be doing any, seductive videos. In fact, I wasn't even really that open to being that involved because, there's something about having breast cancer that I think men should understand. It's just like, it really takes, you kind of feel like, I'm a woman. It's like an important feeling of being a woman, is your body and your breast, it's kind of important to you. And you go through this kind of body image crisis, which I was really severely in. I was like, who am I? What happened to me? And so I was really shy. I became very shy because I didn't want to get really close to anybody because I was so paranoid about it. I really was very paranoid about it. And I've got friends out there that know that. I was very apprehensive about being intimate with anybody because of that. And so, no, there is absolutely no possible way that what they said was true. And I've got a friend out there named Rick, and he absolutely knows what a prude I really am. He knows that I would never be promiscuous and out there with anybody that didn't really love me and care for me. And I wasn't interested. And I didn't trust any man at that point, especially not after Kent. It was like I was fine being alone after that nightmare with Kent. And then meeting this other creep that was on, Star Maker. I have absolutely no interest, just like I'm fine. And all I want to do is sing. It's like, I'm going to sing and sing and sing. And then finally, somebody notices me. Did I plan on that? No, I didn't plan on that. I'm glad it did. It is what I do, and I do it professionally. I'm experienced. I have a lot of experience, and I'm not competing with anybody. It's like live and let live. I've always, and I probably have like so many witnesses on Star Maker of how supportive I was to them. That I was never a part of the players on there. I was always very quick to be supportive, and it's just the truth. I can't make people care. I can't make people do the right thing or to stand on their own 2 feet and tell the truth. There's nothing I can do. People are going to say what they're going to say. But all I can do is be my best me. And all I was doing was focusing on my own life, my own future. And even I'm asking the doctor, why am I still alive? You told me I had 3 to 5. You told me you need to take care of this disease. And here I am. I'm still alive through a lot of mishaps through my life. And I just want you to know that when you think that you're going to die, a couple of things happen. One of them is not so good. The other one is kind of freeing. What's not so good is that you don't make a lot of extra plans because you think, okay, well, I'm not going to make an extra plan. I'm not going to do anything extra than what I really enjoy doing, which is singing. So I'm just going to sing till I die. And that was keeping me happy. I don't want to waste another minute not singing. That's how I felt. And so it's like, what do I have to lose? What am I here for, God? I wanted to know, what am I here for? And I remember telling this to a roommate. What am I here for? I think maybe it's to sing. Because everybody's told me I'm not going to make it, but I'm making it. But now that you see what's unfolding here, everything that was going on behind the scenes, maybe there really is something to this chosen thing. Maybe God really did want me to shed some light on some darkness that's parading around as light when it's not. Maybe this is my time to say that you don't understand the worth of the soul after all. I want to read you something. Let's see if it comes back on. No, it's not going to come back on. But the worth of it. Do you realize? Can you imagine sending your only son to die to save somebody, anybody, the worst person in the world you could imagine? Can you imagine? For the worst person in the world that you could imagine, that you could send your only son to go die for that person. Well, he did. He really did. And no matter what wrongs or my own sins, and we all have them, believe me. I mean, you need to examine your own lives before you go pointing fingers and making up stories, because you just don't know. You don't know. But each soul is so incredibly important. And even if nobody else but your own children love you, that one person loves you, and that one person needs you. No one is not, from the prophet to someone that's in prison, has walked through this life without committing sin. And I believe that one of the worst sins of all is to pretend like you follow God, but you don't. Is to pretend that you're something that you're not. And you think that God doesn't see that, and that he doesn't know that. He knows if you're authentic. He knows if you really mean it. And if you parade around as something that you're not, in jealousy, causing harm to another person, it's going to catch up with you. It just is. If you wonder why God's not helping you, I can assure you that's why. And another thing, and I've said this before, there is a universal stage that's big enough for all of us. And one person's gifts and talents should inspire us and help us to grow ourselves. You know, there's always going to be somebody better. You know, there's always going to be something new coming along. And, you know, you have to embrace that because we have something to learn from it. I'm not jealous of other people's talents. I'm glad and grateful for the gifts that I've been given. Even the gifts of being able to have my mind so open that I can receive information from a higher power, even my ancestors. And I always knew I had that gift. There was a friend on the app that I once told, I'm sorry, I can't keep your secrets. I'm kind of like diarrhea. I just have to say the truth. It just kind of falls out, you know. I'm a true spirit. I mean, I don't like secrets, and I don't want to. I just feel like we need to live authentically. I live authentically. And I'll be the first to tell you if I did something wrong. You know, because I know I'm not perfect. I'm trying to fit in. And sometimes fitting in means you kind of screw up too, because, you know, if you act like a prude, then nobody wants to be around you. So sometimes it's psychological pressure to be less than what you are. And then, of course, we're all subject to that, right? And afraid to live to our potential because we want to be loved. We so much want to be loved and cared for and appreciated and treated with respect, just for simply being a human being. And as I even say that, every living thing that the Lord has ever created deserves kindness. And for us to be cognizant and aware of their spirituality, whatever that creature might be. So let your light so shine, and don't worry about who is holding you back or spreading lies or trying to harm your spirit and diminish your light. Yeah, just shine anyway. And even though it breaks your heart to see him do that to you, I'm telling you, God lives and he loves us. Really, he loves us. And we matter no matter what people want to do to you. We really do matter. I love my Savior. And I know he loves me. I'm sorry, you guys. But you should know that's how I really feel. And I have been through hell and back. And I know that I've done nothing to hurt or harm anyone deliberately. No one. I wish you the best, and I pray that you will seek some forgiveness for your lives too, and I know I have to keep asking. I wish you well, but you need to leave me alone now. You need to move on with your lives, and this inheritance that you've taken over the years, it really does belong to me, and so does the truth. The truth belongs to me, and I deserve it. I really do deserve it. The Lord loves me, and it happened this way for a reason. It did. It happened this way for a reason. God bless you. Have a nice day. Till next time. Take care.